Leo Terrell, thank you so much for joining me for this really special edition of America Unfiltered here on location in your offices at the DOJ in Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much. I can never say no to you. So this was a privilege and an honor for you to have me on.
It is absolutely my honor. Thank you. Something very tragic that has been making, I think, all of our hearts heavy, which is the terror attack in Bondi Beach, Australia, leaving 15 Jews dead who were trying to celebrate the holiday of Hanukkah. Leo, what is your takeaway from these events?
Horrific. An attack on the Jewish community worldwide. And I blame, in part, the Australian government in allowing this Jew hatred to fester. They had warning signs of hate and terrorism towards the Jewish community. And what played out there was unfortunate, and I think the response by the Australian Prime Minister is weak, because basically they have allowed the Palestinian, or the concept of a Palestinian state, to exist. This is really something that is tragic, because it gives a message that Jew hatred is okay in Australia, and I find that offensive.
I want to ask you a follow-up question. You mentioned a Palestinian state. How do you think that ties into the anti-Semitism that we witnessed in Australia?
I'll tell you exactly how I feel. I think the concept of any of these countries, such as Australia, France, or Canada, recognizing a Palestinian state is an acceptance of what happened in October 7th, 2023. The attack on Israel, the attack on at the Nova Festival. To me, to reward these people who have this obsession to commit genocide on Jews is really rewarding them. And I think this is a direct impact of that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we saw the Israeli Prime Minister actually criticize Albanese. Netanyahu specifically pointed to exactly what you just said, the Australians recognizing some sort of a Palestinian state, but also it seems like the Israelis might have shared some intelligence that Australia ignored. Is there that kind of a relationship between the Israelis and the U.S. as far as you know in terms of intelligence sharing and keeping American Jews safe?
Well, first of all, let me tell you right now, the greatest safety valve that the American government shares with Israel is the best president the Jewish American community and the world had ever had as far as supporting Israel. That's Donald J. Trump. President Trump is a unicorn. Never in my lifetime, I've been on this planet for a long time, has there been a president so committed on recognizing the rights of Israel and protecting the rights of Jewish Americans and Jews worldwide. Now, whatever intelligence sharing that the president of the United States has with Israel, I'm not going to say on television, but I will tell you right now, there is a perfect relationship between Israel and the United States, and that's because of President Donald J. Trump, unlike the previous administration.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And I want to stay a little bit on the United States, on the home front. We heard also some breaking news about the FBI thwarting a potential terror attack in Los Angeles planned for New Year's Eve. It seems like the way the FBI described these perpetrators is pro-Palestinian leftists. What can you tell us about this?
Again, the 35 years of being a lawyer, I have to reserve any comments about intelligence or any information, but I can tell you this. Again, it's President Trump's commitment and his directive to every bureaucracy, every office in this government, the FBI, Homeland Security, Secretary of State's office, Department of Justice. Go after the bad guys, go after the terrorists, go after those who want to inflict harm on Jewish Americans and Jews worldwide. So this is the president keeping his promise to make sure they capture, all these agencies capture the bad guys. And the bad guys are those who have this hate motivation targeted at Israel and Jews as a whole.
How do you expect what happens next with these, I guess, alleged perpetrators of this planned attack? What do you expect will happen next? How do you think that contrasts with the Biden administration, how they might have handled things?
Day and night, President Trump has sent a signal, a message. We're not going to tolerate hate towards Jews. We're going to prosecute you. We're not going to look the other way. And that's what's gone on in the Trump administration with Pam Bondi running the Attorney General's office, Department of Justice. I'm proud to work for her, and the president, along with the Secretary of State's office and Homeland Security. It is a all hands on deck effort to fight anti-Semitism and fight hate. You asked me to compare it with the Biden administration. Non-existence. But the Biden administration allowed Jewish hatred to exist and flourish. And I would submit to you that they had what I call the Michigan strategy. Win Michigan at all costs, because they needed to win Michigan for a political strategy at the expense of ignoring the hatred towards Jews. You look at the schools during the Biden administration, the Ivy League school, the school that I went to, UCLA. It was a failure to protect Jewish Americans on every scale, from the national level to the local level. And you had prosecutors failing at the local level to prosecute hate crimes. They mischaracterized them. They underreported them. So I would submit to you that the Biden administration completely abandoned the Jewish community during his last 2 years.
And that's something that you'll hear from a lot of leaders in the Jewish community. And that brings me to my next question, Leo. Regarding the universities, we saw in the previous administration much failed moral leadership among the university presidents who were brought into the United States Congress to testify, and one after the other seemed to fail again basic moral tests of understanding the nature of anti-Semitism. What is your DOJ doing right now in terms of the universities?
Well, you're being very kind, because the previous administration and during the Biden administration, those universities just allowed Jewish hatred to exist. This president has made it very clear, President Trump has made it very clear, we're not going to tolerate anti-Semitism. We're going to enforce Title VI. If you allow hate to exist, we're going to take away your funding. We're going to enforce Title VII. We're not going to allow Jewish faculty members to be harassed or tormented. And so what he's going to do, and what he has done so far, he has worked out settlement agreements for these schools, these universities, to stop it, to prevent the hate to exist, to allow Jewish students to walk on those campuses like black students, like white students, like everyone else. Jewish Americans should be treated the same way, and not be denied due to their religious rights. And that's what the president has done. He has entered into several settlement agreements which have been beneficial in stopping the hate. There's still hate out there on these campuses, but these settlement agreements, he has put these schools' feet to the fire.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think the American people have been wanting to see, a president who will lead that way, a DOJ that will lead in that same way. What differences do you think we can see happening at the universities should the administration succeed in holding them accountable?
I think the Jewish community and the country as a whole should see the contrast between what didn't happen during the Biden administration and what is happening in the Trump administration. And what you'll see, kids will not be denied access to the campus. They will not be told you can't walk down this pathway. You can go to your classes. And I think it's also an appreciation and a recognition that the faculty members have an obligation to make sure Jewish students are afforded the same rights inside the classroom. I like to see more work on the curriculum from within, because I honestly believe that over the last 10 to 15 years, our higher levels of education have been hijacked with far left policies of sort of demonstrating a anti-Semitic behavior.
Well, certainly we all need to ask those questions. How did we get to where we are? Leo, I'd like to pivot our conversation. I know our viewers are really interested in your personal story. You're a man who made headlines because you were a lifelong Democrat, and then you started to support President Donald Trump and rebranded yourself as Leo 2.0. Can you tell us a little bit about that personal journey?
Yes, thank you for asking me that question. This is really a no-brainer. I grew up as a Democrat, family Democrat. And I would submit to you, in 2020, I don't know what direction the Democrats decided to go far left, but I have always been a civil rights attorney, and I believe in the rights for all people. But the Democrats abandoned what I consider basic civil rights. First of all, they abandoned the whole concept of supporting the law enforcement. I'm old enough to remember John F. Kennedy, even Bill Clinton wanted 100,000 law enforcement officers in the street. So they went so far left and they abandoned fundamental rights. Again, their abandonment of the Jewish community. I am a civil rights attorney. I understand the history of Jews and blacks in this country. Jews helped create the NAACP. Jews walked with black Americans in the 60s, making sure that black Americans had their rights allowed to go to school. 2 Jewish activists lost their lives in 1964, Werner and Goodman. So to me, there was a total abandonment of basic Democrat principles by the Democrat Party. Trump, to me, represents everything great about this country. Fairness, equality, making sure no one is treated in a preferential or more preferred way. And it was an easy decision to make to become a Trump supporter. And when you look at 2025 now, that was the best decision I ever made. The Democrat Party has gone so far sideways. I'm glad and a privilege to be part of the Trump administration.
So what's your assessment of the Democratic Party? Do you think they're lost?
Let me think about that. Yes. They're I don't know what they are. Again, I grew up with the JFK, the Lyndon Johnson, Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton. But somewhere with the Barack Obama administration, it has gone so far left where all of a sudden equality is no longer an issue. You have to be in this clique, this group mentality. There's no individual thought. And, you know, as a civil rights attorney all my life, I believe that everyone should be treated equally and fairly. They don't see that as an issue. And what we've been talking about with the Jewish community, I think you cannot be a viable Democratic candidate if you support Israel. You can't become the Democratic nominee if you believe in supporting Israel or you believe in making sure the rights of Jewish Americans are protected. That's crazy. That's outrageous. I'm old enough to remember Joe Lieberman was the vice president nominee for the Democrat Party. That cannot exist with this current mindset of the Democrat Party.
So, Leo, if you were to look at the midterms and the 2028 election, presidential election, what's your prediction on all that? Where do you think the country's headed?
Well, that's a tough one. I honestly believe, and I expect this country to enjoy its most prosperous year with the Trump tax cuts. I think we're going to have a very good year. I got my fingers crossed, and I believe honestly and truly that Trump's promises of making America first, keeping America secure, making sure the border is safe. Don't forget, Trump has settled 8 wars. The man deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. So I honestly believe, and I'm hoping that the Republican Party maintains control of the House and the Senate, and that we continue on with the Trump years to make America great.
What do you think President Trump's legacy is going to be at the end of his term?
Look, I've said this all the time, and I say this without any reservation. I'll debate anyone. President Trump is the greatest president in my lifetime. The man thinks outside the box. And I find Trump derangement syndrome, I find that coming from people who are jealous of President Trump. You cannot expect the Democrats or the left to honestly give this man any praise whatsoever. They wake up hating him. But I know, I think most Americans, maybe many cannot say it out loud because they are Democrats. He's done wonders for this country. He's changed the focus. America first is important. He has turned from America last to America first. And I think I've recognized that. I left a good job working for Fox News because the president called me and asked me to work in his administration. That was a no-brainer. It's easy. Yes, God and country, this is a privilege to be here talking to you and serving in the Trump administration.
I couldn't agree with you more. I was, honored and privileged to serve under President Trump in the first Trump administration. And Leo, I want to take this back to your personal story. How does it feel to be a black man fighting for Jews in America today?
Great question, Ellie. And I'll tell you what, I get that question every day. Why are you doing this? What's motivating you? To me, that question makes no sense. this is not a Jewish issue. Fighting anti-Semitism is an American issue. It's a Western civilization issue. Every American should be fighting against anti-Semitism. It's not a partisan issue. My skin color, my ethnicity has nothing to do with my motivation. I am an American. I believe in religious freedom. So why am I the face of this battle? Because it's the right thing in the greatest country, a country that believes in religious freedom. So I would hope that people stop asking that question. And I would hope everyone jump on the bandwagon. If you believe in religious freedom, you should be fighting anti-Semitism. I can't be free. I cannot enjoy my religion if others in this great country are being denied their right to enjoy their religion.
It's a beautiful statement, I think, on America and what this country stands for. When you look at the Trump administration's anti-Semitism policy, how do you explain it? And is there something for outside governments and the outside world, for foreign governments to learn from?
Oh my gosh. Hello, Australia. Hello, France. Hello, Canada. Could you imagine? I think we were talking about this before we started the interview. We could do so much more. If these countries wanted to know how to cure the problem, just look at the Trump administration. Look at his executive order. Look at his directives to the FBI, to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Make sure you prosecute these individuals to the fullest extent of the law and characterize these crimes as what they are. They're not vandalism, they're hate crimes motivated by religious dislike towards Jews. Fight the problem by identifying and recognizing the problem is targeted towards Jews. Fight it, and I guarantee you there'll be a complete change.
That's what we hope. And Leo, you have been such a leader in the field. Just recently, you were kind to come speak at a conference that I helped organize on anti-Semitism growing, unfortunately, on the right wing of the American political spectrum. What is your take on what's happening there?
Well, I'll tell you, let me be as clear. I'm a truth teller. Anti-Semitism exists on the left and on the right. And I will call it out on the left and on the right. And what scares me is some of this anti-Semitism is overt, but the dangerous part is when it's covert, when it's secret, when you give the impression, oh, I'm not anti-Semitic, but we know you are. And I'm telling you, this is the biggest concern because I'll tell you, Ellie, I used to be, I was a former school teacher and I taught history. And I taught about World War II and the hate towards Jews and the Holocaust. But never in my lifetime have I seen Jew hatred, anti-Semitism as rampant, as intense, and in some weird way popular. And like I said, it's on the left and right. Again, going back to the basic principles of this country, if you believe in religious freedom, we should all be fighting it on the left and right and calling it out on the left and right. My heartfelt commitment is I will call it out because I'm here for one purpose and one purpose only, to eliminate, to fight against anti-Semitism. And it's a 24/7 commitment and job. You can call me on the weekends. I'll fight it. And I have called the FBI on numerous occasions because of hate crime that pop up. But the point here is that it would be wrong for me or anyone to point it out on one side and not look at the other side as well.
And I think that's the kind of honest conversation that needs to take place in the country where everyone calls out any kind of hatred wherever it's coming from. Leo, you just mentioned also about the states and the local level of what you at the DOJ are dealing with and hate crimes, anti-Semitic hate crimes in particular. Where can we see the DOJ step in where there is a sense, and you and I were talking about this, that in blue cities and blue states, there's a failure, frankly, on prosecuting hate crimes, on even identifying it when a hate crime has taken place, in particular against Jews?
A great question. Let me tell you right now, the federal government cannot do it all. We can't. What we were talking about, the hate crimes that are going on at these college campuses, that's That's the jurisdiction is local city governments, the local district attorneys, the local police. I would love to find out how many hate crime charges were filed in these cities in the previous administration. And there's a failure to prosecute. These individuals are creating anti-Semitic crimes against Jews, and yet they're being released the next day. And they're not being prosecuted for hate crimes. To me, this is the biggest problem. And the federal government can only do so much and go in so far and threaten these departments and threaten these agencies, and sometimes go in and replace them with the FBI or the U.S. Attorney's Office. But I'll tell you, I was speaking about this just recently, and I'll tell you right now, we need a wake-up call. We need to regain control of our local city officials. These cities, I don't care if you're blue or red, just be fair and fight anti-Semitism. Because again, this is an American issue. And the problems that are existing not only on the local level regarding the failure to prosecute crimes, we gotta protect our local schools from teaching hate to our K-12. So all the action, Ellie, is on the local level and the state level. And the federal government here in Washington, we can look, we can complain, we can take some action. But the day-to-day 24/7 action has to be taken on the local level.
And when you talk about what's happening right now on the local level, it brings me to the question of the anti-Israel, anti-Zionist sentiment that we've seen spread all across the country. Again, most of it under the previous Biden administration, they allowed this all to spread. How do you explain to people how anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism?
Well, I'll tell you, this hate and this concept of global intifada, of destroying Israel, destroying the Jewish population. It has to be understood that they have conflated these two issues. And yet it is an issue that, like I said again, has taken steam or caught on. And the key here is this education process that when we talk about K-12 and college, to me, the colleges have been hijacked already. But what is frightening of this teaching and this brainwashing going on in K-12, primarily due to the control of the teachers' unions who control the curriculum. And these teachers' unions in these public schools they're anti-Semitic. The unions are. I just came from a recent meeting with the Department of Labor. If I had the control, I'd be suing against all these teachers' unions. These unions have taken positions on Israel, teachers' union on Israel, and all of a sudden have changed their message in trying to downplay the Holocaust, attack the existence of Israel, and then teaching permitting the hatred occurring of anti-Semitism in the curriculum. It's all over the place.
It's really shocking to hear what you're saying right now, Leo, because you're basically telling us that here in the United States, our children are being taught by people who have some sort of agenda against the Jewish state of Israel.
Yes, I am telling you that. I want to be clear about that because there is no question, and I hate to give the anti-Semites credit, but they have taken over the universities. And now they want to take over K-12, where our young kids are taught at an early age to learn how to hate. And before I became a lawyer, I was a school teacher. So this comes dear to my heart. I still have my teaching license. And the power of the curriculum, the power of the lesson plans that are given to first graders, second graders, third graders to teach them that Israel is wrong, should not exist, that Jew hatred is acceptable, we're in trouble. We're in serious trouble right now.
What do you think we can do about it?
Again, there needs to be a commitment on the local level. Don't get me wrong. We need a President Trump in the White House, but the action is on the local level. It's at the school districts. It's at the city council meetings. It's their decisions to have these boycotts against Israel goods and products. It's all happening in the city council meetings, and we're looking the other way. We have to focus on making sure what's going on in these cities and towns And police departments and district attorneys recognize and understand that anti-Semitism cannot exist and should not exist, and we have to be responsive. Could you imagine if they were prosecuting these crimes, the deterrent effect in a city like Los Angeles would have on an impact like on Chicago or Seattle or New York, but it's not being done. Where's Alvin Bragg?
Leo, there are so many friends and people in the Jewish community that echo your sentiment. And in particular, I know in New York, a lot of folks are very frustrated with Alvin Bragg. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're making a call to action on the local level. You think Americans need to get involved on the local level.
Oh, if you believe in religious freedom, if you want to fight anti-Semitism, start in the local small town, the city council, the police department, the mayors, the schools, the school districts, the superintendent, the school board. If you want to stop it, start there. I mean, that's where we go first, because we have to save the children. They're the future leaders.
We do have to save the children. And Leo, I know your time is short, so I have one last question for you. Many describe you as a hero. You've got one particular story which I think really resonates in the heart, and that's about the Israeli Hadar Goldin, who was kept in Gaza for so many years. Could you tell us the story of the Goldin family?
Yes, and I wish I had my hat, because the hat is the story. Hadar Goldin was a young man who was murdered and kidnapped in 2014. He was an IDF soldier. He was held in captivity for 11 years. His mom came to my office and told me the story, because this was in addition to the ongoing war against Hamas, that he had been held captive. And she wanted to make sure he was never forgotten. And she wanted to have his remains returned. She had the right to bury her son. I said I was going to do anything and everything possible. So I came in with the concept, and this was like 5 months ago, to have a symbol. And the symbol was a hat.
And I think we have the hat right here.
And I came up with this symbol, and no one knew this name. I just put Hadar Goldin. I also put the 45-47 in honor of the president, and the American and Israel flag. And I'm doing something for the first time since November 11th. And every time I went on an event, if I was doing a TV interview with you, I would wear this hat, just like this. And it would force people to say, hey, who's this guy? And I would tell them the story. I would wear this hat everywhere. Television, any event, this hat was on. I received an award on November 11th, 2025 from the Zionists of America. And I had this hat on, but during my acceptance speech, I took the hat off, because on that day, the remains of Hadar Goldin were returned to his mom.
Wow.
And so from that day, November 11th, I took the hat off, have not worn it since. And that mom had the right, and she did, have the right to bury her son. And it's just unbelievable that I could have played some small role in helping bring Hadar home.
Well, Leo, what I heard was that you played a very big role. Oh. That with that hat that you thought of and created and wore everywhere, that you brought attention back to someone who had been held in captivity for so long prior to October 7th and had been generally forgotten. And that you are the person responsible for bringing attention and helping to bring Hadar Goldin back home for burial, which is very important in Jewish law and Jewish custom, Jewish tradition, to be able to bury the body in a proper burial.
But let me just say this, because it goes back to what we said at the beginning. For me to be in this position and for me to be able to do what you just articulated, I thank you for those kind words. I got to thank President Trump for putting me in this position. Pam Bondi for allowing me to use every tool in the toolbox to do this. And so they deserve a lot of appreciation for their help.
Well, Leo, I think President Trump has assembled an incredible team. I am so grateful to you. Thank you so much. And thanks to our audience for joining us for a special edition of America Unfiltered with Ellie Cohanim.
Thank you very much, Ellie. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.